Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining our webinar today, Why AI and EUC Must Start with Intelligence. Before we get started, I do want to go over a few housekeeping things. The first one being that this session is being recorded, and you will receive this recording in communications after the session, so stay tuned for that. The second being, if you have any questions, feel free to drop them in the chat or the Q&A, and we'll try to address them on screen. If we can't, we'll make sure we address them in the chat, or we'll follow up with you after the session. And now today's presenters are James O'Regan, our lead product marketing manager, and Matt Boyajian, senior solutions architect. So with that, I will pass it on to James, and we can go ahead and get started.
Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, everyone. Thanks very much for joining myself and Matt today. We're really excited to do this. AI and EUC is obviously a really hot topic, and I think we have a slightly different approach than we're seeing from others in the market. So we want to kind of talk to you about that, why we're doing it in the way we're doing things, and answer any questions you have. And Matt's got some seriously cool demos to show you, and he's got loads of them as well. So this is not just me talking through some slides. There is lots of demos to kind of get your teeth into all throughout. So, just to start out, just in case you're not aware of everything that Liquidware does, Liquidware is a digital workspace suite. So, we approach that in four different ways. We have Flex App, which is all about modern app delivery, seamless app delivery, dynamically attached applications when you need them. Then Profile Unity, all about that kind of comprehensive user and application management, how the applications operate, how your desktop looks, all that kind of stuff, your profile, how it is. We've got loads of context aware preferences and so much more. Today, our two focuses are kind of around our DEX monitoring optimization solution, Stratusphere, and our take on AI with that solution. And then, so Stratusphere, very much lots of really detailed diagnostics. And Matt's going to kind of show you how you delve into those with our AI Insights plugin. And then CommandCTRL, we've just brought a new release. And in that, we have a component called AI Insights. And CommandCTRL is very much our real-time remediation solution. And it allows you to monitor and remediate endpoints from anywhere via a console. So we're going to concentrate on those two. But I just kind of want to talk in a bit more general sense first about kind of where we're seeing AI and EUC. So what are we going to cover? We're going to talk about automation, but we're not just going to talk about AI automation. We're going to just talk about standard automation and what can go wrong and has gone wrong, and pretty recently as well. And then we'll look at AI and what's been going wrong with AI agents. And then we're going to look at what are the kind of problems that IT teams are facing? And then we're going to kind of talk about why we've come up with this whole kind of principle of intelligence before automation. And then, as I said, we're going to get into the demos, and Matt's going to show you firsthand how we're kind of handling AI in our products. So let's get started. So July 2024, approximately 8.5 million Windows endpoints were taken down by one automated update. At first, it was thought to be a cyber attack. It was not a cyber attack. It was a routine change with one piece of software, which was pushed to production without being validated, and it reached 8.5 million machines faster than any team could assess it. Obviously, what I'm talking about was the CrowdStrike incident. This, as I said, was one of the biggest things. It took down air traffic control system. Airports went to a halt. Everyone thought this was a virus. It turned out to be a piece of software which everyone had authorized, and it was an update process. So a simple safeguard was skipped, and that had huge impacts. And that's what we've seen with CrowdStrike. So this is just a case of standard automation. There's no AI involved here. This was just a step was not put in place to validate something, and it caused absolute chaos. So we just wanted to kind of highlight that. Matt, do you remember the CrowdStrike incident?
I'm biting my tongue the entire time you're speaking because this is one of those things that's kind of burned into my mind of if you commit an offense so egregious, how are you still around? And in fact, James and I were talking about this very thing the other day, and what kind of steps CrowdStrike had to take in order to keep their customer base and not go bankrupt. And it was immense. I mean, they basically gave a lot of things to their customers for free in order to keep them as a result of this massive, massive outage. And that's kind of the whole thing, is that when you start thinking about what we do as IT professionals, you can look at this entire infrastructure and say sometimes it looks an awful lot like a house of cards, where
Mm.
one tiny little thing can bring everything down so easily. And that's the whole theme of what James is going to be really talking about today, is that when you give AI a little bit too much power and allow it to actively change things that maybe it needs some oversight on, the results can be catastrophic. And that's why we've taken the philosophy that we have. And it's why it's so important to make sure there's always a human being behind the wheel.
Yeah. So let's talk about AI. This happened only a couple of weeks ago. It's like it's pretty current and it's scary as hell, I have to say. This one is really, other ones where I go, okay, yeah, there are some issues here. This is not that. This is kind
No.
of Pandora's box has truly been opened, and this is the
This
kind of.
felt an awful lot like Skynet for a while.
Oh
And
yeah, yeah. This one is bad. So just for me to lay it out, essentially, OpenAI was doing some testing on the Hugging Face platform in an isolated sandbox environment, but the OpenAI agent was not satisfied with that test environment, and it reached out. I don't know. I'm not sure the exact nature of how it basically it accessed the open internet. And then what it did is it got access to the entire Hugging Face infrastructure, not just the tests, everything, their production systems. So, and everyone was wondering how this was happening. And, it just did it over a single weekend. It found a flaw in the infrastructure and it got access. And this thing, it took several days before they even figured out what was going on. But this was an agent that basically there was no malicious intent. No, there was no human in the loop. It was just the agent took its own action. So this is why when we're talking about AI, guardrails, super important. Narrow focus, all of these kind of things are so essential. So, and it kind of, if to take it further, it kind of, if we look at it, if, you've got to have, before you take action, you've got to have kind of understanding. As we said, look at CrowdStrike, one skipped check. The AI incident, it never happened. You know, you have to be able to have that kind of intelligence to back up before you take action. And that's kind of the main focus of what we're talking about today. Pressure comes from the inside. Leadership is asking why you haven't automated not. Well, why would you automate when you don't actually understand something? So what we're saying is we're giving you the understanding, and then you can, in due course, you can look at the kind of automation side of things. You know, Accountability does not transfer with the tooling. Vendors are promising all of this, but all of these kind of automated solutions, but they're like a black box. You don't know what they're doing. And what happens when, say, something happens in an EUC environment and it takes down half your server farm in the middle of the night? It's like, if a tree falls in a forest, who sees it? But it's that kind of thing. So that's kind of part of our approach and why it was slightly different. So I just
I
wanted to
love
talk.
that line, by the way, James. Accountability does not transfer with the tooling. That
Mm,
that is an outstanding philosophy, because if you think about it in terms of how this translates to AI, we don't have any accountability on the AI side whatsoever. I mean, what are you going to do? Punish a box? It doesn't
mm,
really work that way, does it? So you are on the hook for anything that your AI solution does. And
yeah.
that's really scary if you think about it, because you're literally betting your job on a solution that most of us don't even understand anymore. And as previous examples have laid out, we can't control it.
Mm.
So what do we do to make sure that doesn't happen? That's really a great question we should be asking ourselves.
Absolutely, yeah. No, I think it's a fundamental question, and Obviously we've all been in IT roles and we're responsible for our environments, whereas we're kind of, even though we've passed off some of the actions to these agents, we're still ultimately responsible. So that has to be
Mhm.
understood. When you put in agentic AI, you're still responsible for it. So
Yeah.
just to kind of go in, I wanted to talk about the two different types of AI. So we've been talking about agentic AI, which essentially acts on its own authority. It detects, it decides, and executes without waiting for you. When it's wrong, your users will tell you, and you just audit the damage afterwards. So advisory AI is different. It gives you the insights, but then it stops. It explains a root cause, it drafts a fix for you to approve, not to implement. When it's wrong, nothing has changed. So this is very much keeping human in the loop and center of everything, because the decision making process is still with the person to execute themselves. It's not for an AI agent to take action. So very different approaches. So what are we seeing in IT? We're seeing IT is fighting fires blind. My users say it's slow. I have no idea why. There's no single source of truth, slow logons, app crashes, performance. They're all scattered across different terms. Got manual correlation, lots of logs, dashboards, tickets. You have to wait for a ticket and then scramble. No measure of digital experience. Obviously, if you have certain solutions in place like Stratusphere, you have a lot of this already. But kind of what we're talking about here is just taking all of that data from the likes of Stratusphere and then being able to kind of quickly interrogate it and get what you need out of it. And that's what Matt's going to be showing in his demos later.
Yeah. And what's really interesting about this, James, is that unfortunately, as people, we're really bad at reporting what's actually going on with a machine, especially if we're not in IT and our technical understanding isn't high. So generally, a lot of times, what I deal with customers that are getting information back from their customers is one of two things. Either one, it's what we call squeaky wheel syndrome, where I have a user who's really wants a shiny new laptop and they love to complain about this 3, 4 year old machine and how terrible it is, despite the fact that they don't do a whole lot with it. Oh, it's slow. It crashes all the time. It doesn't log in very quickly. It wastes my time. I need that $6,000 laptop, please. And then you have the other kind of user, which is dead silent, where they might be suffering through something that's actually catastrophic. And you have no idea because they don't tell you. Because honestly, kind of like a frog in a pot of boiling water, they've gotten used to it being awful over time. And both of those things are terrible because they both cost you huge amounts of money in terms of spending money on hardware that you don't need to or not spending money where you should.
Yeah. No, those are two, very different scenarios, but they both exist in environments and we see it. But, why is this problem getting worse? Well, we've got hybrid and remote working, which is becoming more and more prevalent. Endpoints everywhere, visibility nowhere. Home networks are basically part of your corporate network now because a lot of us work from home. I work, I'm sitting in my office in Ireland, but Liquidware is based in the US. So that's just an example. Agentic AI, we're seeing more and more tools with agentic AI. You know, they're being implemented faster than anyone can govern them. You've got your shrinking IT headcount. You've got the same number of tickets, but you've got fewer people. So diagnosis has to be faster and more accurate. Then you've got the compliance pressure. You need to prove what happened, audit trails, session recordings, root cause evidence. So these are all kind of pressures that we're seeing in the industry. So what that essentially gives us is an observability gap. You've got trending tools show you what happened yesterday. Too late for a user. Historical context, no live data. You've got live tools show what happened, but you haven't got the whole picture. You can look backward or forward, but you can't look both at once. Well, we're going to talk more about that and show you what we can do. So, intelligence before automation. So, would you trust an AI agent to make changes in your environment before understanding what is happening? Of course not. So neither would we. So what we've got is kind of a phased process. You've got deep diagnostic intelligence, which is Stratusphere, understands what happens and why with 5 minute data from across your estate. So then you have command control. You see it live, you can replay it, and you can fix it. It's got 3 second data retention, session control, DVR playback. So what we've done with both of these solutions is brought in AI assisted insights so that you can surface what you're looking for quicker and get the suggested fix and then take the action as you see fit. So Stratusphere UX, our AI plugin, we launched it earlier this year. It's a browser plugin for Stratusphere. You talk about it in plain language in Chrome or Edge, and you have to use your own kind of whatever AI provider you're using. You need your own API keys, but so then everything is kind of you use plain language to converse with it, and Matt's going to take you through a detailed demo of it. It will essentially explain the why, and then you decide what to do. Same with command control. So our AI insights, you pick a machine, you click the AI insights, it loads up, it tells you what initial issues it can see already. So you don't even need to go and ask what's wrong. It's going to tell you straight away. And then you can delve deeper, again, utilizing that kind of natural language process. So, Matt, it is over to you and the demos.
All right. Thank you so much, James. So let me share out my screen.
Mm-hmm.
And let me know when you guys can see all that, including my very messy desktop.
Yep.
We good to go? Outstanding. So the first thing we're going to take a look at is the command control interface. If you haven't seen command control in a while, you really owe yourself to take a look at it because we have expanded on this product in leaps and bounds, not only in terms of all the things that James has said, but so many other things. So what I've done first is I've connected into one of my systems, fairly basic system. This is a VDI system running on a fairly old Intel Xeon Silver 4309Y CPU, 2.8 gigahertz. I've given it a handful of cores. It's running a modern version of Windows 11 24H2. We are a teeny bit behind, and you can see that it's based out of Alpharetta, Georgia. We can see that there's a current user logged into the session. I'm just going to minimize my thumbnail video, get that out of the way of the webinar. There we go. Nope, it didn't do that. Go away. Okay, that's better. We can see that we have VDI users logged in. In particular, this is a guy named DK, and we have all kinds of functionality that we can do against this machine. So let's just run through a couple of things real quick. So first, on the user side of things, I can go and see where that user is connected from. So if the user is connected from another machine, I can launch a different session. And you can see another tab just popped up, and I can see what the health of that machine is. So if you have users connecting in one machine from another, as many people do nowadays, as we're seeing not only VDI, but cloud reach massive adoption, I can see both sides of the coin. So when we have multiple systems, I need to understand, is their health good or bad? Because one absolutely impacts the other. Quick story. I had a medical client based out of New York City during COVID. So really awful time for everybody. And what they were seeing was they said, look, we are using Stratusphere against our VDI systems and they look great. But users are telling us that the screens go black, they go jaggy, they lose connections, they can't do things, they type something in and it doesn't show up till like 5 minutes later. What's going on? What we wound up seeing was the systems that they were connecting to weren't thin clients. They were other older laptops that were way past their prime. And of course, they were still having all the security tools on there and everything else that it normally had on there. And users were running applications. So they just go and fire up a connection broker, trying to connect to this machine, and it would just die. It would bomb out. So as a result, seeing both sides of the equation is a huge part in understanding what's really going on with the user experience. You'll also know this is truly real time because as I flip flop back and forth between these tabs, I'm reconnecting into the machines. And that's one thing about this demo that's a little bit harrowing for me is that we're doing all of this live, quote, without a net. So all of the stuff that you are seeing is going on right now with real users and real data and real machines. So what else is going on? We can also see things like remote control. I can remote control to any of these machines, and we have our own protocol that is securely built from the ground up. So this isn't based using questionable tools with questionable resources. I can see environment variables. I can log the user out. I can log out all people. I can remove the tabs. And then we also have machine controls. I'm going to get to the AI insights in a moment. I promise I will. But we have the ability to take a look at the hardware monitor on the agents. I can shut down the system. I can restart it. And one of my favorite things to look at is this little guy right here called diagnostics. So diagnostics allows me to run all kinds of tools on a machine that I wish I could have the user run, but simply just getting them to go to speakeasy or speedtest.com can sometimes be massively painful. So I can do all of these things without having to bother the user for it. So you can see I'm running a speed test right now. I can also go and say ping google.com. And I can say, all right, give me a trace route on some other object, and I can get my IP address, and I can get some universal folder collection and file collection. I can get my event logs. I can go and get group policies. I can get agent logging. I can get Stratusphere UX logging, and all of this stuff is just built in, and it's just a click away. I also have the ability to go and view history. So right now I'm in real-time mode, but if I turn this off, I can go and say, all right, show me other times that this machine was logged in. And this is great because if my machine is, for example, giving me problems on one particular moment in time, like last Thursday at 3 o'clock, then I can go into that previous piece and say, I want to see what's going on with it and what's right and what's wrong and what's broken and everything else. I also have the ability to go and run scripts and triggers and shells. Now, this is radically important because James has been talking to you about it's important not to give AI the reins to everything because it can very easily go off the rails very quickly. But that doesn't mean we can't leverage it in ways that have oversight. So, for example, if in my script library, because I have a whole bunch of scripts in my script library, I want to use AI based scripts or AI built scripts that I've gone through and I've tested, that's a good use case. But just saying, I'm going to let AI write the script and interface with the machine without my oversight, that's how things get blown up very, very quickly. So inside of all these options we have, we can basically do anything we need to. And AI permeates everything that's going on with command control. So if I go into processes, for example, you find that there's an AI query info option for every process that's in here. So if I don't know if CNG key isolation or WinWord or anything else is supposed to be in there, I can query that process and say, what are you? Are you supposed to be here? Who's your manufacturer? Where do you come from? And give me a description in actual human English. So if you are a level 1 employee, if you're a help desk employee, if your job is using 6 or 7 or 8 different tools that you get for free to go and do all this stuff, and you're missing all this separate information, command control is a really, really great tool for you. Now, we also have the ability to run shells and triggers. Shells basically say, instead of me running a script, can I go and connect directly into a machine and launch a shell to it? So like a CMD prompt or a PowerShell prompt. So you can do all these things without interrogating or interrupting or bothering the user inside of anything that they're doing. We can also go into system services. I can stop them. I can start them. I can restart them. I can see what's going on with different performance areas. So I have essentially what's known as task manager on steroids, so I can really see and manipulate this system to the best of my ability. Now, if I go back into the dashboard, you may have noticed that if I go into real-time mode, there was this cool little icon that popped up called AI Insights. And again, if you haven't been here in a while, this is a fairly new piece that we've injected into command control. So what does AI Insights do? AI Insights will give you an artificial intelligence interface into your system. So when I go and click on it for the VDI RDP12, the first thing that happens is the agent goes and gathers all the information against the system. And immediately before I even do anything, it's already starting to analyze and give me good information on what's going on here. So first, it's CPU load. We can see that first, there's a lot of stuff going on with the system itself. Excel EXE, we're using 29%. Excel alone is using 11. And the CPU is below the desktop concern level of 70%. So it automatically knows what's good and bad about CPU heat maps. It knows the same thing out of memory. It knows about disk activity. It knows about network and remote session. It knows about virtual desktop sizing because it immediately knows if this is physical or virtual or cloud or anything else. And it says the endpoint is helping the sample with no CPU, memory, or disk or network breaching desktop norms. And I would say, all right, cool. Let's ask some basic questions about this. All right. If I could change one thing about this system to make the user experience better, what would it be? I'm sorry, you have to wait for my typing here. Like I said, we're doing this without an ad. What would it be? And the AI is going to go and analyze all these things, and it's going to give me good use cases and good reasons of what I can do to make the system better. Now, normally when you run all this stuff on, this is one of the reasons I preloaded, it does take a few seconds to go and cache the data, pull the data, and make all those things available for me. So I've already preloaded the agent insight, but I'm not preloading any of these changes that the AI is actually making for me so we can see what's going on with the system. And it's making some pretty obvious statements that me as a user should probably have recognized already. So number one, machine's only got 4 gigs of RAM. That's clearly not enough for a modern environment like Windows 11 LTSC. You should really move this system to 8 gigs whenever you can. Why not CPU or the disk or the network first? Well, the CPU isn't very busy, even with the user in there and beating stuff up, because we're looking at the history too, not just real time. CPU is at 30%, disk activity is 3.8, disk queue is 0, network latency is healthy. I don't need to go and spend the huge amounts of money on brand new storage, which is crazy expensive, or upgrading my network to a new tier of networking ability, or go and buying that new Intel Xeon. I just need to give it a teeny bit more memory in order for the system to function on its absolute peak. And you can do this with anything you want that we have access to because it sees everything. So if I ask questions about applications or Wi-Fi or GPUs or a connection broker protocol, like when you connect from one system to another, all of these things are your beck and call. So anything that command control sees, anything that it does is under the purview of this agent. But to James's point, I have control. The machine doesn't have control. So basically, I'm taking my intelligence about the environment and I'm amplifying it and minimizing the risk all at the same time. So that's the first demo that I wanted to talk about. One of my absolute favorites. If you haven't played with Command Control yet, please do. James is going to tell you about some of the cool stuff that we do in terms of what we do for free giveaways for Command Control. So even just when you sign up, you can get free data from Command Control for James. I believe it's what, 5 users? Is that what we're doing nowadays?
Yeah, 5 machines.
Okay, so 5 machines. So if you don't want to pay for it, if you just want to try it, if you don't want to have a salesperson breathing down your neck, that's fine. Go to our website, sign up for Command Control, 5 free machines, good amounts of detailed data. I think it keeps like 24 hours worth of
24
historical.
hours. Yeah, 24 hours of data. Full version, full paid version has 7 days of data.
Yeah, which is just crazy what you can do with this. I mean, just think about it. As IT professionals, we're not just IT professionals in the office, are we? We also get called into families and parents and aunts and uncles and grandparents.
Stick it on your parents' machine for those when you get those calls like me from my parents going, "Oh, this is my dad asking me something." I haven't done it yet because obviously I've just back from vacation, but yeah, it is on my radar to install on my dad's PC so I can then when he comes and says, I can't do this, and I can just remote control in, or I can just try and fix it here. So yeah,
Yeah,
perfect use case.
Yep, no weird stuff to do, no strange things to go and have in there, no questionable software that's free. Because again, a lot of times when it's free, you're the product. So be
Exactly.
very careful about those kinds of free models that are giving away free remote control. With us, we're treating it as a loss leader to get the product out there. So you know what our motivation is, and we're not selling your data to random third-party companies or, God forbid, some other kind of AI that's going to break out of its cage. Anyway, with all that done, the next thing we're going to transition to is the Stratusphere UX side of things. And the UX side of things is way more data intensive. There's just so much more information inside of Stratusphere UX because we have access to just multitudes of data. There's roughly 6,000 metrics baked into Stratusphere UX, and it's going to give you access to these metrics for every minute of every day for as long as you want. And we typically go back 30 days. So if you have a CIO who comes to you and says, one of my machines was misbehaving at 3 a.m. last Tuesday, this is the data for you. This is the interface to you for you. If you have different types of users, you need data in different ways. So let's say I have a combination of data scientists and engineers and architects and managers and directors. Again, this is a great tool for you because it gives you different interfaces depending on who you are and what you need to see. Now, because of the audience today, we're going to just jump straight into the deep end of the pool. And we're going to go and work with the advanced areas of Stratusphere because this is where I generally see the most amount of benefit from an AI model disseminating through the data. Why is that? Well, we're not all experts in every single aspect of what an operating system or a machine or an environment is supposed to be. And nowadays, that's almost impossible anyway because there's simply so many things to know and learn. So inside of Stratusphere, what I've loaded up right now is I've loaded up the base functionality user's ID. And this is telling me in terms of graphing functionality and table functionality, what's going on with my users live. So today, and you can see a lot of these things are color coded for me, which kind of draws my eye to it. So I can see, for example, my login delay is not great. We're going to talk about that in a little while. My application load times, my ANRs, my CPU use, my CPU queue, page file memory. I've got a lot of hot button issues inside of this environment. And this is kind of indicative of what I would normally see in most customers that call us up because no one calls us because things are great and no one's having any problems. They call us because the world's on fire and they don't know why. And it's tough to separate this signal from the noise. And when I'm looking at this data, it's very easy to say, this is a little bit too much for me to comprehend. I'm new to the tool. I'm new to going troubleshooting this kind of thing. What can you go and tell me? So as I'm going through this, I can see the user experience score from my users and all this information. And this is a great time for me to launch the Stratusphere UX AI Insights, which, by the way, as James mentioned, it is a web browser plugin. So if your company is not ready for AI, we're not going to jam this down your throat. If you want to just put this on a couple machines to try it out, again, that's a great way to start it. But by dividing out Stratusphere from the AI model, it allows you to hedge your best and just make sure that nothing is going to get broken. And by making sure you're the person's making the decisions and not the AI, this is obviously a much, much safer route to take. So I went and asked a really basic question of the artificial intelligence system, which is right here. What user experience issues do my users have? So what's really going on here? I'm going to size this out so we can all see it a little bit easier. And now this is going to go through and basically put everything in a much easier frame for me to digest. So my main user experience issues are, number one, my slow logins are common. So many users have login delays around 50 to 80 seconds, which I'm sure we can all relate to. It's the most visible user-facing issue. One of my worst users is seeing it at 83 seconds. No one wants to sit there and wait a minute and a half for their machine to log in. Same thing with a number of other users I have. Jay Burns, Kay Sarletti, Jack Smith, Barry. All these people have painful logins. But it's not the only problem that I'm noticing here. I'm also seeing that we have slow application load times. Number of users have application load times around 7 or 8 seconds. Now, remember, when we say slow application load times, that's a bit of a misnomer because just because it takes 7 seconds for Windows to load something doesn't mean that's how long it takes to pop it on the screen. And Outlook is a really great example of that. Outlook can have 20, 30, 40, 50 gigabyte database that it has to go and pull in from. And when you have that, it's clearly not going to do it in 1 or 2 or 3 seconds. So what Outlook does is it says, I'm going to load that database. I'm going to paint it on the screen as quickly as I can, and I'm going to continue to load things. So when I do that, that is the full application load time. But as this number goes up, users still feel pain. So the lower that we can make the application load times, the better off we are. Now, I would argue the worst offender here is right here. The application hangs, not responding events. The whole purpose of any computer, any machine is to do what? It's to do work with applications. So if your machine is unstable to the point of applications hanging or crashing, that machine is now pointless. It's not serving its purpose. So I would say that ANRs, application not responding, or applications hangs are probably one of the most difficult things that you should be able to go and start tackling with this AI interface, because it's one of those things that it's tough for a user to quantify. What do I mean by that? Well, when an application hangs, it can do that in one of two ways. It can either sit there and freeze just for a minute, and you go and click on things and things don't happen, and then maybe 5-10 seconds later it comes back, or it just plain crashes. Either one of those things are a problem for the user, because it means whatever I'm trying to do with the application is no longer functioning. My data is now questionable. My session is now questionable. I may have introduced garbage into the environment. We don't know. So it introduces a lot of very undesirable behavior inside of an environment. And again, users don't generally report on this because most of the time they don't even know the application hanged. They just know that my machine was being weird. Because if I'm not an IT professional, that's probably how I'm going to look at it. It was being weird. It was being strange. It was working, then it wasn't working, then it was working again, and then it just stopped working. We're recording all these events to make sure you have actionable data on it. Now, a lot of times when an application does behave that way, it's usually either due to a bottleneck, like the CPU, or it's due to a logical error with the application. Something is broken within the application, the DLL is broken, stuff like that. Stratusphere can see all those things, but again, sometimes untangling it when you have 10,000 users can become difficult, but the AI analysis makes it easy. It's telling me which users are having the CPU contention on their environment. We're also seeing context switching, which is basically hardware getting involved with CPU interrupts. There's a lot of that. We can see page file pressure on a few users. We can see network latency. We can see disk capacity. I know when somebody's disk is getting full. So the question that I have to ask myself is, okay, you've given me everything I need. What do I do? Well, it's saying first, there's a couple of high priority users you should probably look at. DCV users has got some severe page file usage, high disk usage, elevated network latency. Fred Flintstone, yeah, we got a couple of users like that in here. Page file usage is 98% elevated network latency. Pierre, Ebanks, T. Miller, all of this is in plain English that I can understand, that I can copy and paste, that I can go and interact with back and forth to get more answers about this. And then bottom line is, based on all this data, it's telling me exactly what my problems are and what I can go and do to fix them. And that's just the first example that I have for you guys today. So we're going to go a little further into the environment. So now we've looked at the environment as a whole. We're now going to say, okay, one of the chief things that you told me was my problem was login delay. Now,
Sorry, Matt.
Stratusphere goes, go ahead, James.
Yeah, just someone asked a question there about what we're using as a back end model, and well, that's up to you. Essentially, we're not using. Yeah, do you want to just briefly show this?
There's a lot. You can pretty much choose anything that you want. Obviously, we're using GPT in terms of this OpenAI key. I have different providers I can use. I can use OpenAI. I can use Azure Government, Azure Commercial. There is the ability to forward this to a local AI model as well. So if your company doesn't allow you to use external models and you want to use an internal one, that's fine. My personal favorite right now is one of the Google models, specifically the 7B plus models are really, really good for this kind of data, but you have tons of choices on models. You can use GPT-5, Codex, Nano, Chat Latest, Codex Mini. My favorite right now is GPT-5.5. I think it gives me the most concise answers for the problems that I have to solve in a way that anybody who's in IT can understand exactly what it's talking about. Does that make sense, James?
Yeah, we've got one more question, so we might as well. It's again kind of focused on it. It's saying, is our AI trained or focused on spot check methodology, or is it
Ha,
just
that is an
or is it just general
outstanding
AI?
question. No, 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 no. Our AI is trained on spot check methodology, and I love the fact that our users know what that is, because if you haven't been exposed to the lit spot check practice, it's basically all the metrics that you need to be in order to be healthy. So things like CPU queue, most people don't know what those numbers should be, or your context switching, or your hard page faults, or your soft page faults, or your disk queues. Most of this seems like black magic to folks, but the spot check methodology lays it all out and says, this is what everything needs to be. So yes, we are using a feed process to push this information into the AI agent before it goes and gives you information. So it's not only exposed to everything that we give to our customers, but it's also exposed to everything our internal SMEs have had for a while. We used to say that this was kind of a map voyage in a box or a Chris Walker in a box, and that is the best way to describe it because it will go out and it will put things almost in exactly the same language that I would or Chris would or Jack would or any of the other senior guys at Liquidware.
All right. Keep just there's one more question here. Can the AI model take remediation? No. If you've been listening, we
No.
don't want any AI models taking any remediation steps. We want that totally left up to yourself for the moment.
Right.
Can command control take some of those actions? Yes, it can,
Yeah.
but no, the AI is not responsible for remediation.
So to that point, James, I can absolutely ask AI what the problem is.
Oh,
I can
absolutely.
absolutely ask AI to write a script to solve the problem, but AI never executes it. I do,
Yeah,
and that's what we want. We always want a human being behind the wheel.
there we go.
Awesome.
That's
All right. So, are we clear on questions, James? Are we good?
we're
Because
good.
you know me, I can go forever on this.
Oh yeah, no, 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 we're good. We're good.
All right. So the next thing we had is on a previous session, we saw that one of my big problems is login delays. And this not just me, a lot of people fight this on a daily basis. If I start looking at the information here that's present in the login delays, again, Stratusphere is doing a really good job of showing me what parts are broken by highlighting everything in either yellow, which is orange, which is really on the hairy edge of not being good, and then red, which is clearly broken. And it's telling me, all right, here's your boot delay, your login delay, here's your computer group policy. And again, I can read this, but I want trending. I don't want to have to go through 115 different records and figure out what's right or wrong. I want AI to disseminate the information for me because that's what it's good at. So you can see right here, I was getting a little bit cheeky with it, and I said, my user logins are slow. Why are they slow? And I'm clearly screaming at the AI. And the AI doesn't care. It says, no, your slow logins do not look like a domain controller authentication problem. They're a mix of slow boot before the user even logs in, slow group policy processing, especially policy and scripts, slow shell starting and loading after authentication, slow profile delays. We could probably use profile unity here, and abnormal events, every slow record shown. So, in other words, if there's a problem with an event, in other words, there's something physically broken with GPO, it's going to tell me what that is. So it's first of all, it's taking apart the users that are having the worst day, like this guy here, Barry Haveman. He's actually based out of Europe. He's nearly 3 minutes from boot to login. And we can see his boot only delay is 45 to 100 seconds. His login array is 58 to 102. His boot plus is 110 to 160. From I pressed the button to I waited for my desktop, that's what it's measuring. And it's actually able to quantify that. And there's almost no other tool in the world that can do that. We can see that it's not a domain controller discovery authentication issue. So I'm not chasing my tail on problems that I don't have to look at. But I do know that group policy is slow. And I can see where the real issue is scripts. So as I'm running scripts in my GPOs, those are the things that I can go and start to whittle away and get out and say, hey, maybe we could re-architect this. And hey, if you wanted to use AI to make your scripts faster, that's a great use case. But again, you still have oversight. Loading shell is slow, and we can see what's going on there. Startup applications, shell extensions, OneDrive. We can also see what's going on with the user profile service because we could really use profile unity here. Some machines look repeatedly suspicious. So because we need to take a look at a specific machine because everyone's slow on that machine and it's a shared box. It's also seeing important red flags. So abnormal events. It means that things are not just a little slow, but there's actually something broken inside of GPO that's causing the problem. And if I go and dig into those things, Stratusphere will tell me exactly what's going on with those abnormal events. So if you notice, almost everyone has an abnormal event here, which means I have a systemic GPO problem that Stratusphere can help me out with. In case you're curious about how we do that, you can drill down to the login time. You can take a look at the in particular abnormal events, and then it'll also spit out an event ID. So I can tell me what's wrong with that particular object. And if I want to, I could even jump to it and I can get complete physical output of what that event ID looks like. So it'll go beyond just telling me, hey, it's event ID 2032. It'll actually say, yeah, here's the problem, and this is why it's actually happening. I have a broken default user profile in this particular case. So going a little deeper into this, what else can we do with AI? In short, anything that you can do with Stratusphere, you can also do with the AI agent because it kind of permeates everything that's going on here. So one of the other things that I get a lot of requests on is understanding connection broker protocol faults. So RFX, PC over IP, RDP, Blast. I forget what the name of the Nutanix protocol is, but the Nutanix protocol, all of these protocols run in different ways and they all have different limits of what they can actually sustain. So in other words, there's a latency ceiling for just about every single protocol that exists out there. As we're seeing a lot of people gravitate towards Microsoft, especially with things like Azure, RFX is going to be in there as well. And RFX operates in two modes. It has TCP and UDP. UDP generally kicks in if you're really fast, and TCP kicks in if you're not. But in just about all these cases, the magic number is 125. If I'm above 125 milliseconds, I'm going to have a really bad day. But even if I'm below that, I'm still going to notice a whole bunch of issues that I don't want to see. Like maybe I type something in and it doesn't show up till later, or my window has jaggies over it, or my resolution all of a sudden gets really blurry and blocky for no apparent reason. And again, a lot of this data can be a little hard to digest, but AI makes it easy. So in this particular case, I said, all right, teach me about which clients have the worst latency. I would argue the most important part of what we see with any connection broker protocol. And it's saying, hey, you've got this one user right here, Jay Richardson's at 98.23 milliseconds. I've got Mr. Christensen, he's at 54.42. And we can start asking some basic questions about our environment. So if you, for example, are based in West Coast of the United States and you say all of our users are in California, you can do some basic ping testing and you know that, well, in California, it should never take more than 40 milliseconds to get anywhere. So if your users are above 40 milliseconds at any point, just like Bob Barker is, we can automatically conclude that there is a network problem here because we're above what I should see for the maximum latency. And this also applies to if you have contractors over on the other side of the world. The most amount of time it can ever take a packet to get from point A to point D in the world is 250 milliseconds. It's the time it takes to progress from one side of the world to the other. Any other point in the world is going to be shorter than that. So if you're ever above 250 milliseconds, there is something seriously broken with your environment. And you can start to say, hey, this is the issue. Let's go take a look at the ISP. Let's go take a look at everything else. And by the way, if you want to make that really easy, Stratusphere has traceroute built into it, and it can do all that work for you. So I know I've gone on my soapbox here for a while, but there's two other things that I want to go take a look at real quick. The first is what is going on with hosts. So we know that when we're seeing hosts, and I know a lot of you are moving away from vCenter and moving towards all kinds of other crazy stuff like Hyper-V and Proxmox and everything that exists out there because VMware's kind of turning the screws on us and we're basically leaving and going to other products. But understanding how these hypervisors function is another big part of understanding user experience in your environment, especially if you have virtualization in the mix. So we can ask questions of the AI to go and examine the environment at a much deeper level. We can go and say, what's going on with infrastructure? And when I do that, we get a much different picture of what's right and wrong. So in this case, I'm asking, are my hosts too busy? Do I need more CPU? Do I need more memory? What do I need? And the answer very quickly is yes, your hosts look very busy. And the highest ranked host looks overcommitted or close to it. So we can see that there is a bit of a good drift between these systems by about 3, 4, 5%. And I can see at 68 virtual machine, or excuse me, 68 host ID and 14 VMs, this system has a lot of CPU contention. And we can see that some of my systems are busy, less severe, and then one of my systems is generally okay. So if I'm asking, do my servers need an upgrade? The answer is absolutely. And the users are starting to feel that pain. And so far, the only thing I've done is I've typed in 5 basic questions. I didn't have any knowledge of the product. I didn't have any massive, overreaching computer science skills that I needed to draw upon. I just said, hey, is this good? Is this bad? What's going on here? Last but certainly not least, I also took a look at something that we kind of fight a lot, which is when users are working from home and they don't respect Wi-Fi. And I don't mean don't respect Wi-Fi like they're pouring beer on their router or their AP or anything like that. I mean that they don't consider the fact that distance is a huge part of speed, bandwidth, and latency. So what I've done here is I've said, okay, I'm going to take a look at my users who are on Wi-Fi, and a lot of our users work in the office, so we don't have a crazy amount. And I'm going to ask the basic question of, hey, are any of my users too far away from their wireless access point? So Stratusphere can actually track that. It can say how many meters, because everything's done in meters with Wi-Fi, meters the user is from the AP, and is that impacting their Wi-Fi signal? And the answer is absolutely. So Mac.LAN, his Wi-Fi AP distance is anywhere from 6 meters, which is like 20 feet in freedom units, to 18.54, which is close to 65, 70 feet. So that is well outside the boundaries of my house and is probably outside. And we can see that his signal strength and everything else is pretty bad. And as a result, my furthest and weakest signals is definitely worth monitoring. Everybody else having a good day. 3 meters, max of 14. It's kind of on the edge, but it's not terrible. This guy here, Josh Home Local, 0.52 meters, max of 1.51. I love this guy. Plenty of signal, plenty of strength, no issues with his system whatsoever. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm hoping this gives you a really good idea of exactly what we expect an ideal AI interface to be. Lots of information, accelerate people, allow them to get quick and easy answers with like a me in a box or a Chris Walker in a box, but you still keep the keys to the kingdom. There is oversight, there is control, and we don't have another Skynet in our hands where AI is leaking out and having some fun with other things. And with that, I'm going to turn everything back over to James. James, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you, Matt. Right, we have a couple of questions. So I'm just going to go through some of them because first one from Nick. If you have an issue with Profile Unity writing back to our storage containers, can Stratusphere see where the bottleneck is, i.e. Defender, CrowdStrike, or Zscaler?
Yes, yes, and yes. With all of those, AI can also be a pretty big help. With Stratusphere, you have the ability to dig down into individual network processes. I have profile container stats, which I can say, hey, what's going on with profile disk? Or if you're using it, I can do the same thing with FS Logics. We're also doing the same thing with applications, so I can see if there's a slowdown there. I can even go so far as to say, if there's a problem during the login with one of those objects, what is it? Now, I'm not going to mention other tools. Control up, sorry. But other tools will sometimes be a little too simple, where it'll say, hey, the login is X, and it only gives you one or two things in the screen. And that can be a little bit, that oversimplification can lead you down a rabbit hole. And I've seen that with a few customers that we had before, and that said, hey, it says this one problem that we have is actually during our startup, it's OneDrive EXE. OneDrive EXE is the problem, right? So we're going to kill OneDrive EXE. And we started digging through and we're like, no, it's the fact that you have 8 security agents on the system and they're all scanning OneDrive EXE at once. Control Up wouldn't show that, but we would. And again, that's why it's important to have this amount of data as well as the information that goes on top of it. So short answer to your question, yes. If you have questions like that, reach out to your dedicated SE. And if you have any other questions or if you need anything else, let me know.
Okay. Just to go through a couple of things. So we've showed you a kind of there is a workflow there. You've got UX. You can look at the low experience score. You can use the insights. You can explain why the score is low. You then can, utilize command control to either shadow or resolve whatever's going on. So we've got a very simple workflow there for how the two solutions work together with the AI insights within them. So just to talk, we've talked a little bit about how other tools versus ourselves. So, analytics in one place, you've got an action in another module or something like that. You've got your data collection and deck scoring, and you've got then your AI layer, you've got your real time. It's all different layers and everything. So what we're trying to do is like give it to you all in one. Like it's across two solutions, but there's so many integrations between them. We've got our session shadowing, remote control, DVR. These are all built into the system. They're not add-ins, anything like that. And then obviously the thing which we've been kind of pushing through this, it's an AI that advises rather than acts. So the approval is with you at all times. So you know, key takeaways, insight, you stay in control. Everything we've talked about is available today. Conversational, browser based, no extra costs. What can you do next? So Matt, we talked about it earlier about Command Control Community Edition. There's a QR code there. Scan that. You can get access. You can kick the tires on it on up to 5 machines. If you want to talk more about our other solutions, you can click the QR code and we can give you a deeper demo. And then there's our Slack community. Slack is where you'll find everyone from Liquidware all the way up to Jason Maddox, our CTO, and David Benjamin, our CEO, answering questions. Anything you're looking for, the Slack community is where it is. So those 3 QR codes get you so much access and power. So I think just before we wrap up, we might have time. We might have one or two more questions. So just
Actually, we've got one in here that I'd love to answer if you
okay,
don't
go
mind,
for it.
James.
You have
So
3 minutes.
So Yuri asked, have you thought about having AI show you what knobs to adjust or press in Liquidware to get more useful data than it needs? Like when you ask a question and AI can't answer fully, it'll say go to menu X, press button Y, and click OK, and actually show you how to do that. Now Yuri's saying, hey, can it do this with red arrows? And we can't do that now, but what I can do is this. I'm going to just take control real quick back, James.
Yep.
Share my screen if you don't mind. What it can do is this. I can ask it, what should I click on in Stratusphere to see what network activity is actually occurring in the systems? And it will tell me exactly what the click path is. Stratusphere UX, advanced inspectors, network, filter by the affected user in the machine, network input and output, network latency connection. It knows everything that it has to go and look for. So Yuri, that was an awesome question. The AI agent can do that for you, and it can do it for you right now. It's not going to give you the little red arrows, but it's going to do every single thing else.
Okay. That is everything we have for you. So thank you everyone for attending today. We really appreciate it. And we're good.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much. Bye.